The next thing we're going to talk about is the High Empire. We're still talking about the Roman Empire. We've kind of zoomed through the early empire. Now we're going to start talking about the High Empire. So Domitian is assassinated. And after he is assassinated, the Senate appoints Nerva as the new emperor. And then Nerva chooses a guy named Trajan as his heir. And Trajan was a popular general. So let's see. So in the High Empire, we basically have the group of people called the Spanish emperors, which are Trajan and Hadrian. So in this lecture, we're just going to talk about Trajan, and then I'll break into a separate one to talk about Hadrian. Okay, so let's talk about Trajan. He's Spanish, so he's from what is now Spain, but at the time it was part of the Roman Empire, because the Roman Empire was very expansive at this time, as we know. So he's the first non-Italian emperor, even though Italy's not really a thing yet. He's the first guy from outside, like what was Rome in its original capacity. One of the first things that he does, and one of you is writing about this in your discussion research assignments, is he remodels the Circus Maximus. The Circus Maximus is where they had chariot races, and it was very, very popular with the public, so it was a clever thing to start with because it was very satisfying to the people. The other thing that he does right off the bat is he starts construction on his new forum. So remember, emperors like to each have their own forum, so Rome is getting kind of crowded with these forums at this point. And this one is massive, it's huge. So it is actually 2 times the size of Octavian Augustus's forum, which was already very large. So it's really big. It has many features, which I want to just kind of run through really quickly here. So we have the forum proper, so the kind of courtyard area itself, which is the, what is the actual forum. In the middle of that, we have the large equestrian statue of Trajan, which means he's on a horse in the statue. That has been lost to time and probably melted down and repurposed somewhere along the way. We also have the libraries. So this is a pretty standard feature for forums, is we have each emperor is kind of establishing his own archive and library. We have a temple. This is called the Temple of Trajan. So it has several different gods, shrines to different gods within it. We have the Column of Trajan, which is a new kind of monument that we're going to talk about in more detail in a minute. And then we have the Basilica Ulpia. So Ulpia is Trajan's last name. So his name is Trajan Ulpia. So that's why it's called that. Basilica, we've talked about what a basilica is before, but just to reiterate for you, in the Roman Empire, a basilica refers to a type of building. And this type of building has a secular purpose. Later, the kind of same format of a basilica becomes the standard plan for cathedrals and churches. But at this time when it originates, it's an administrative building. It's often where the courts are, so it has civic functions. And basically it's just a large hall with kind of a nave in the center, aisles on either side, and on this case there's a double apse, there's an apse on each end. And that is Basilica Ulpia. Okay. So this is what it looks like in the present day. So not a whole lot left of the Forum of Trajan, but the Column of Trajan is still intact. So let's look at that in a little more detail. Just so you know, on your quiz over Rome, I ask you about the Column of Trajan, and if you try to cheat and reverse image search it, it will pull up the building behind it and not correctly identify what I'm asking you to identify. And it will be very obvious that you cheated, so don't do that. Okay? This is the Trajan, the Column of Trajan. And so what it is, it's a sculpture, kind of, but it's kind of, I'd say it fits more in that category of monument we've been talking about. So like the altar of Zeus, the altar of Augustan Peace, the triumphal arches, those kind of things are all monuments, so somewhere between architecture and sculpture, and I think the Column of Trajan also fits in that category. So it's pretty fascinating, and we see other columns like this being built later for other emperors. This still stands today. It's 128 feet tall, so it's quite tall, And there are 625 feet of friezes. So, you know, on a temple, a frieze is just like a horizontal band of relief sculpture. On a column, the frieze wraps around. It spirals all the way up the column. And in this capacity, it's a narrative frieze. So it is sequential and is showing us almost like a comic strip, different documentation visually of different things that happened during Trajan's rule. So there are significant battles that he fought and things like this. So you can see some examples of what that looks like up close in the upper right-hand corner here. Okay, so column of Trajan, good thing to be able to identify. Another part of the forum that still stands are the markets of Trajan. They are still standing today. So these are that Greek word stoas, remember? So these are the stalls for different people who would have things at market. So you'd have like your butcher and your cheese guy and your wine guy and the person who sells textiles would all have stalls at the marketplace. So this housed 2 floors of shops, and we see this style that becomes popular in the High Empire, which is it's made out of concrete. We have the concrete skeleton underneath, just like we were seeing in some of the Flavian architecture as well. But instead of having marble facing, this is faced with really skinny brick. So we have this brick-faced concrete becoming this style that is seen a lot architecturally from things at this time. Okay, so next we're going to talk about Hadrian, but we'll just stop off there talking about Trajan.